Yo, it's the Ultimate Finesse, your girl's favorite wrestler, one half of the Impact World Tag Team Champions, Chris Bay, and you're watching and or listening to Count It Out, and it's just too sweet.
You are listening to Count It Out with Mike and Tyler.
Well, we are live, pals, and welcome to an incredibly special edition of the Bill Apter Sealed of Approve Count It Out with Mike and Tyler. My name is Tyler, and I am not only joined by Mike today, but I am joined with a man who is taking us down the road of WrestleMania as it makes its next stop in Toronto this Saturday as we get ready for the Elimination Chamber. Returning to Count It Out to talk all about it, former WWE Tag Team Champion, current WWE producer, and cat dad extraordinaire, TJ Wilson. TJ, what's going on, man? Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much for the introduction, man. I'm doing really well. How you doing?
We are excited, man. It is an exciting time to be in Toronto, Canada right now. WWE is getting ready to take over. It's always great when WWE comes to Toronto in general, but especially when you guys are bringing the big PLE here, the big event, returning to the Rogers Center, always the Skydome in my heart. And
Yeah.
right? But I want to get right into it, man, because it is the most exciting time of the year for wrestling fans. And things just got a lot more exciting last week on SmackDown. We saw the return of the final boss. The Rock shows up. How last minute was this appearance of The Rock popping in there? And what does this do, like, as a boost to the company heading into WrestleMania season?
I mean, I found out kind of when everyone else did, when it was announced, like on Twitter or on X or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you know, as you just mentioned, Toronto, and you're mentioning The Rock. Remember Rock and Hogan, WrestleMania in Toronto, like everything that The Rock touches, especially when it comes to wrestling, it becomes very exciting and very unpredictable. You don't know what he's gonna say, let alone what he's gonna do on live TV. So yeah, man, what an exciting time. WrestleMania season's always exciting. But like you said, coming to Toronto, and obviously, we're all going to be a little bit biased, but the Canadian fans are so awesome. And with Elimination Chamber at the Rogers Center, it's just it's a chance for for Canada to kind of show like what our fans are like too. You know what I mean? Kind of like Backlash in France and Backlash in Puerto Rico. It's kind of like that is what it kind of feels like, except this is heading into WrestleMania, not coming out of it, as those two that I previously mentioned are.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned it 22 years ago, we had The Rock and Hulk Hogan at the Skydome. I'm going to call it the Skydome for this interview just because, that's in my heart. But
that's what it was then.
100%. It was the Skydome then. We're at the Rogers Center now. But, what do you like when you look back at that match 22 years later? Like, what comes to your mind? It was just such an incredible moment in the history of the company.
I mean, I think it's burned in everybody's brains, right? The face-off and how they just both stare off. And the people are going I love that match. I do love that match. I watch it. There's a couple matches that I watch like a couple times a year. I watch a lot of wrestling while I'm working out. There's a couple of matches that are like, right now I'm watching a lot of just old Nitros. I mean, you guys know, being Canadian, we didn't get Nitro for a long time in Canada.
Right.
So, and when we would, when Nitro was 3 hours, we'd get a 2-hour one on like Wednesday nights.
Exactly.
And it would be random stuff edited off of it. It wouldn't be like, okay, just the first hour is not on or whatever. It would be random stuff. So I like just throwing on lately I've been liking throwing on a lot of old Nitros and just kind of working out. But there are I'll see a clip of something and then that'll be the match I'll go watch while I work out or whatever. But there's a few that are like in the rotation a couple times a year, like the Canadian Stampede, 10-man tag, Rock versus Hogan, Brett versus Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13. Like, there's a few that I watch more than once.
Yeah, I was in the crowd for that. It was a phenomenal moment.
For what for the
For Hogan and Rock, I was ninth
oh,
row on
you're
the
there.
floor. Yeah, I was ninth row on the floor, and when he started hulking up, man, I turned in. I was in high school at the time, but I went back to
Yeah.
being like a six. Like I was jumping up and down and
Dude, I
like
have goosebumps right now.
hugging,
You
hugging
telling the
people. Like
story.
I didn't know, man. It's like I go to a lot of sports. I've been to Raptors, built Buffalo Bills, a lot of concerts, and that right there is it's one of the loudest and coolest moments I've ever been a part of, in just
Yeah,
sports in general.
it's funny you mentioned the Raptors. I was at the Raptors game where the Raptors won the championship. I was actually at that game
Oh
in
wow.
Oakland. I'm a big basketball fan, and I'm a big. I love like. I definitely fell in love with the Warriors, like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. I was at that last game with the Oracle, and like I just bought like a cheap ticket, and I just sat up near the top with like just with the random people I don't know. And dude, we're up there like high fiving each other and just like chanting Warriors, and then Toronto won. Toronto wins the championship, which was okay. Good consolation prizes. Toronto did it. But just was so funny, like you're saying, I'm up there with like complete strangers. We're high fiving each other and like hugging. It's funny, man. Sports and wrestling and just that environment. It's funny, like the bond that it creates with people you don't know at all. I don't know. I couldn't tell you the two people that were sitting beside me, but in that moment, for those 48 minutes, we were all pretty cool.
Yeah, 100%. It's so fun, man. It's so fun.
That's
This
so cool that you were
definitely.
there, though.
Yeah, it was. I got the event chair down in my basement. Like I
So
was
let me
ninth
ask you
row.
this: did you have a sense that the reaction was going to go the way it was going to go? Being
Um,
there?
I mean, we were ready. We were ready for Hogan because like Hogan's
Okay.
got such a history in Toronto,
No, for
right?
sure, for
Like
sure. I just was
the
curious.
big event. Like I was in high school at the time, so like I didn't really have like the best internet and stuff. I wasn't like, like I a fan like I am now, let's say, where we have a lot more to see, but just
Sure.
like the energy in the building, like people wanted Hogan. He'd just come back to the company for the first time in forever, and I remember The Rock did like a promo earlier in the show, and they just booed the hell out of him. Like he was,
Mhm.
and then at that moment, I was like, man, like we could see something pretty cool here. And when he started hulking up, I'm getting goosebumps now, like thinking about it. But when he started hulking up again, it was literally like an out of body experience. Like it was everybody just lost their mind, man. It's
Yeah.
the two loudest things I've ever heard in my life were Hulk Hogan hulking up, and I was at UFC in Montreal when St. Pierre beat Matt Serra, the first Montreal one, and those were
Yep.
like two like out of body experiences. But that Hogan one that's top shelf for me, man.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What an experience. That would be so awesome. It was. Like it has. I know where I watched that. I watched that at like with Harry and his mom at like she was working somewhere at the time, and it was like at her colleague's house. But I can remember exactly like sitting on his couch watching this WrestleMania, and I just remember exactly where I was watching that match. There was something so captivating about it. And
Yeah.
I've heard people say like if you were to watch it with the sound off, it's not so good. It's like you watch it with the sound off, then you're just seeing 60,000 people going crazy in the background. You know what I mean? Like try watching it with the sound off. It's distracting as hell with the sound off too.
A
That
hundred
match, man.
percent, man.
Don't try to let people discredit that match. No way.
No, that always bothers me. Watch the greatest movie ever made with the sound off and tell me if it's good.
Or go watch the greatest movie and go put it on like Spanish
Yeah.
language so you don't understand it.
Come on. Well,
Why would you do that?
I was going to ask this later down the card, but it kind of fits into our conversation right now since we're talking about the Sky Dome. We're talking about the magic that's happened in that building. Back in 1998, I attended my very first WWE show at the Sky Dome. And, 23 years later, full circle moment for me. We return here. I'm bringing my son to his very first show this Saturday at the Sky Dome. It's very cool to me that we're going to the same building. Do you
Yeah.
have any memories of your very first show? What the venue was? Who were you with? The feelings you had that very first time watching a WWE show?
Yeah, for sure. The first bunch of shows I went to, they were all at the Calgary Saddle Dome, all of them. I'm trying to remember what. It's so funny, man. I have a great memory, and I like in a lot of these buildings I've wrestled in. I'll walk in and I'll be like, "Oh, I did this here. This happened here," or like it won't always pertain to me either. I'll be like, "Oh, like I know." Like when I was just in Memphis a couple weeks ago, And I know like I wrestled Christian there, and I know there was this awesome Edge and Ray match that happened that night too, followed by this hilarious dark match, which is just this funny inside joke we have. So I text Christian and I text Edge just like, hey guys, I'm in Memphis. I was like, so I have this funny memory that where I don't forget a lot of things. I'm trying to remember the first live event I went to. I remember I hadn't really been bit by the wrestling bug yet. I was friends with Ted, and he'd he had invited me to come to I'm trying to remember, it would have been 91 or early 92, but I think like 90 fall in 91 ish. He invited me to a live event in Calgary, and I went not knowing what to expect. But it's funny, when we'd go a bunch as kids, a lot of the times we would, and I know this sounds funny, but we would be like backstage. So we wouldn't actually be like, we'd kind of just be backstage and just kind of like around and just kind of like seeing, not really bothering anybody, but just kind of seeing the wrestlers kind of go back and forth and stuff. And like whoever we'd be with, like Ted's parents or like Davey or whoever, they'd be doing their thing. We wouldn't actually be like, I wouldn't actually watch a lot of the matches in the crowd, which I wanted to. I remember specifically watching an Owen and Razor Ramon match on a live event, and they did a thing where like the ref's down, and then Owen uses the microphone and hits Razor, and then pins Razor Ramon, wins the Intercontinental title. I remember being so excited, and then another ref came out, and then the match gets restarted, and then Owen lost, and I was so upset.
That's so funny.
That's not the first live event I went to by any means, but that is the first like big memory I have of being at one.
See, that's funny. That's a very similar. The first live event I ever went to was in Newmarket, Ontario, which is about 45 minutes, an hour north of Toronto, and it's just a little venue. And my parents took me. It was 1992, and the main event. And I can't even believe that I'm about to say this out loud, but the main event was Ric Flair versus the Macho Man in this little like hockey arena, and they did the finish where Flair hit him with brass knucks and put it under the arm and did the 1, 2, 3, and we all thought we saw a new champ, and he raised the arm and the knucks fell out, and like it was so crazy, like watching the Undertaker, and like he was on the card, and Paul Bearer,
yeah. Actually, I take it back. I do have one more prior. Davey, I remember clear as day. Davey versus Repo Man. It's something. Repo Man's using his he had the rope with like the hook. He went to use it. Something. The ref's taking it out. As the ref's taking it out, the ref has like the rope part. Davey grabs the hook part, hits Repo Man with it. And like I was like 11 or just turned 12. Boom, Davey hits Repo Man with it. Crowd cheers like crazy. Davey pins him 1, 2, 3. I remember thinking like, Davey's the good guy, but he used that hook. But the people liked it. And that was almost like my introduction into like wrestling psychology of like, how did that happen? How did all these people know to cheer when the good guy? And that was kind of like, I wasn't super. I was starting to get snowballed into wrestling at this point. I wasn't there yet. It was on the way, and that was one of the first things where I was like, that was so interesting. They all knew to cheer, even though he's the good guy and he hit the bad guy. It just was funny to me at 11 years old, 12 or whatever.
TJ, maybe that is the moment that planted the seed in Davey Boy to turn heel on Diesel in 1995. He's like, man, I cheated and got a win here. I might be onto something, right?
Exactly.
This is what I love about WWE in general. Here we are, all men in our 40s, and we're talking about this stuff like it happened yesterday. I can't tell you stuff that happened last week, but the memories that are ingrained in us from our first shows, and that's why I'm so excited. My son's very first show is going to be him witnessing the very last time John Cena steps foot into a Toronto arena.
Again, you just gave me goosebumps again, man. That's crazy.
And he's going to take that with him for the rest of his life. And which is cool because John Cena, of course, he's 6 years old, so of course John Cena is his favorite wrestler,
which is cool,
which is awesome. And thank God they announced Cody's going to be at the show, because if my son was going to be crushed if Cody wasn't going to be there too. But it's so cool to me that I feel like I'm going to my first show again.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm sitting and I'm gonna be watching this show through 6-year-old eyes. This is so cool to me. But it's got to be cool for you too because you get to be there and watch these, families come and you watch these fans, both from you being in the ring and now as a producer. I mean, I'm sure you peer out into the crowd a lot. How cool is it for you to see these bonding and these units and these families come together over the WWE product?
Yeah, it is a it is an amazing thing. And just like you said, like you're about to go to the show Saturday, and now, like you said, you've been to a bunch of shows, but this one, because it's going to be your son's first one, it's going to feel like your first one.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It's funny. No matter, there's just something funny about wrestling and about WWE that it just like I don't know. It just somehow always becomes this. Like I do see a lot of families, and it's almost like it becomes like this family tradition of like like you, most people's like wrestling origin story is like their uncle showed them wrestling or their
That's exactly me.
grandfather or
Yeah.
their parent.
Fine, yeah.
It's it's a traditional thing, you know what I mean? And I think that gets overlooked a lot. And I think that we don't. And I mean, when I say we, I just mean like as wrestling fans, we don't acknowledge that enough. I don't believe, but like really, this is a family thing. And like sometimes, if you see something on the show that's maybe not for you, maybe that is for that 6-year-old, and that's gonna be the memory that he's gonna have in 30 years from now. Like we don't, you know what I'm saying? Like when Davey and Reaperman were doing that finish, there's no way they thought I'm gonna be here talking about it 30 years later.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that was just a match they did in Calgary, and they had the match probably the next day in Red Deer or Lethbridge or something. You know what I'm saying? But that finish had an impact on me. It made me think, oh, this isn't just black and white. It isn't just, oh, bad guy does bad things and good guy does good things. It's like bad guy does enough bad things so the good guy, he's allowed to retaliate with a bad thing too. And then you're like, well, how much and how far can you retaliate? And those are the funny things that like, but it all comes from like maybe there was a 20-year-old in the crowd that thought that that finish wasn't good enough for them, but for 12-year-old me, it really sparked a lot of thought in my brain.
It's kind of funny, like when you think about like the evolution. I'll speak for myself personally, at least. Like when I was younger, like I was into that stuff as well. The fun finish, the gimmicks and stuff. Then I got, oh, I'm a little smarter fan now. It's, I thought, right, and oh, it's cool to boo John Cena. It's cool to, and then it's like you get older and you look back and you're like, oh, I get all of this now. It's like
it's so funny.
It's
we
like
all
going
go through it.
Yeah, it's like you're growing up and you're too cool to cheer for the baby faces and you got to cheer the heels and
we all go through it. And even on like the wrestling side of things, we all go through it. We're like, well, no, this is the way. And then you're like, damn, that person was right. This is actually the way. If I'd done that 3 years ago, I'd be this far ahead, but I needed to go through that myself to figure that out. And like I remember, man, John Cena gave me advice in FCW 2008. He came down. He'd been down a few times. Like actually like one time he's coming back from an injury in 2007 or 8, and we had like a little like singles match on the fly after practice once. Cena and I, like I've had a few little interactions with him in FCW, like, and he was always really, I mean, even to this day, very cool, like ultra respectful to me. I don't have, if I was being like, water tortured or something, I don't have anything bad to say about Cena whatsoever. He's never been anything but respectful to me. But I remember he gave me this advice, and I didn't quite get it at the time, but I was doing I knew I was smaller, and in developmental, you're just kind of throwing, some people are throwing gimmicks at the wall and seeing what sticks. Some people are doing like wacky promos and seeing what sticks. I was just trying to show that I was just trying to be the best wrestler I could. So I was trying to do a lot, like just a lot of chain wrestling and almost like not an MMA style, not like I put in a mouth guard or anything like that, but just a lot of like intricate kind of chain wrestling. I remember Cena saying, hey, like that works for Randy Couture and that works for Chuck Liddell. He's like, my advice is keep it simple, but find out your version of like how to make simple entertaining. And he's like, that's the way to go. And I remember thinking like, I know what he's saying, but he's saying that from his perspective. And then a little bit later, I was like, you know what, man? That John Cena guy was absolutely right.
he might know what he was talking about, eh? Well, we're talking about John. Let's talk about this incredible retirement tour that he's on. What are your thoughts of this? The fact that he's out here again after such a legendary career, not only in the WWE, now he's really starting to take off in Hollywood, and he's come back and he's huge now.
He like I'll be watching, like I said, I'm a big basketball fan, but I'll be watching like basketball and I just hear his voice on like commercials.
Yeah.
He does like he does maybe Ford or something. He's everywhere in terms of like not just wrestling, just like you said. So again, I'm a big basketball fan. Like I remember Dwayne Wade had like a retirement tour, so everybody knew like that was his last season, and I thought that was so cool because at the beginning of the season, you kind of were like, okay, well, his last game, for example, his last game here in Toronto is going to be in March. So if they have a game in like November, December, you can go and appreciate it, but it's not the last one yet. You know what I mean? But it's really cool that that Cena's doing the similar thing where like he's giving you the heads up ahead of time. It's not, he's telling you the truth. Like, hey guys, it's gonna be my last time wrestling in Toronto. It's not some kind of, little gimmick or ploy or anything. Like
it's not Kiss.
Well, let's call a spade here. Let's be perfectly honest. This is probably the most genius marketing campaign WWE has had in years. What better way to get people into every single building you go to by saying, "Hey, by the way, this is your last chance to see John Cena."
Exactly.
Do you know whose idea was this? Was this a WWE idea? Was this a John Cena idea? Do you know whose brainchild this was?
It's probably a collective. I don't know, so I can't really say. But just knowing the people, knowing Cena and knowing WWE people behind the scenes, how smart everybody is.
Yeah.
If I were to find out it was all Cena's idea, I could absolutely believe it. If I were to find out it was all Hunter's idea, I could absolutely believe it. In my mind, I'm just going to assume, kind of like most things, a bit of a collective thing. But that's just, again, me completely assuming. But man, like, I thought the same thing. Like, what a genius thing, and I like that it's like, it's truthful and it's being open, and it's like at the end of this, we could say, oh, these were all the last time Cena's going to be there. But I like that. It is a good marketing thing, but I like that the fans who genuinely do get a chance to come see him one more time, whether that's to say bye or say thank you or both or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just cool. And I think it's kind of bizarre that like the three of us, for example, we're living in a time where like in this moment, like Cena's almost he's not a nostalgia act, but I mean, his career started on TV 23 years ago.
Yeah.
Like that's insane.
Yeah, you mentioned, I do have another Cena question, but I just want to sidetrack for a minute here. You mentioned the word truthful, and I think that the WWE, they've really been doing something that I appreciate as a wrestling fan lately, and it's something that I think used to be a big criticism in wrestling in general is we're not getting our intelligence insulted anymore. And I'll use Penta's debut as a great example of that. Michael Cole on commentary said it was the worst kept secret in wrestling. Like, I like that type of acknowledgement, and I appreciate like hey, John's done, and this is it. Like, I just really appreciate that as a wrestling fan watching the product. That I feel like I'm being treated with respect as well, which is so nice.
Yeah, and exactly, and if you, I agree with you, and if you do, and as a viewer, as a part of the audience, if you feel that way, where you don't feel like you're kind of being insulted on your way to watching these shows, it just feels way better, obviously. You know what I mean? Like and I don't think I do agree with you, and I do think I think there's definitely been a lot of thought put into that and into just trying to, like you said, just not insult people's intelligence, and just like for example, when just like you said, when Penta came out, if everyone was playing off like, oh, who's that guy? You know what I mean?
It's different.
Instead,
right?
it was like, hey, this is Penta. And I was at home watching that. I actually haven't met Penta yet. I think I saw him at the Rumble in the locker room, but he didn't have a mask on, and I didn't know who he was, so I assumed it was him. But anyway, my point is, like, I was watching that at home, and I thought that was like perfect.
Yeah.
I thought the presentation was amazing, and treated Penta like it was funny. It was his debut, and it was treated as such, but it also was in a weird way kind of treated like we all knew him, and like, oh, of course, here's Penta, duh. You know what I mean? In a good way.
Yeah, I thought it was cool that they like released his merchandise like earlier in the day too, and like I saw a lot of people are like, "Oh, they spoiled the surprise." I go, "It's so much cooler to see him come out, and fans are already wearing his mask. It makes him seem like a way bigger deal already too, right?"
Yeah, I agree. Yep. Yeah, I remember same thing. Like I wasn't there that day. I'm on SmackDown at the moment. I remember like waking up and seeing that the merchandise stuff, and I was like, well, because they didn't, no one told me, hey, Penta's going to be on Raw. Obviously, just like Cole said, kind of the worst kept secret, but no one came out and told me. So when I woke up and saw that, I was like, well, I mean, we already knew, but now like we know. But like, it's kind of similar to Cody at WrestleMania 38. It's kind of similar to that in the sense like you knew, or like, sorry, you thought you knew, but what if it was a swerve and it was something else?
No,
There was always that like small what if it, I think I know, but what if it isn't? And like in that, for example, like that Cody one, thank God it wasn't a swerve.
Yeah.
That would have been terrible.
Who would be finishing the story, yeah. I think that would have been a letdown if it wasn't Cody for sure.
It would have been a letdown. I mean, I'm trying to think even off the top of my head, like who in wrestling would it not be a letdown? You know what I mean? Like it would have been tough. Like, thank God that was the right play.
I had like a really crazy idea at that time that the only person not that Cody that I think fans and my like that would have been okay and cool would have been if it was like the Undertaker for like a quick choke slam, like one last spot in front of the fans as the Undertaker, because his last match was the Boneyard. But I mean,
That would have been one of those ones that in that stadium would have been a pretty good reaction, and then the next day,
it's what do we? Yeah, it's like what we want. Yeah, no, I'm happy it was.
But that is a good point. That is a good point. That one would have worked in the moment for sure.
Just the moment. But I think that the right call was made with Cody. That's 100%. pretty safe to say, right?
Yeah.
I just want to circle back to Cena really, really quick here. You had a really fun interaction with Cena and Hornswoggle at the Royal Rumble, and I'd love to get your memories of that. I just thought that was such a fun moment, and probably a cool moment for you to be in there with Cena.
I loved it. It's funny. Hornswoggle talked about it in his book, but when they broke it down to me, I was like, okay, no problem. And here's the thing: if I'm not going to win the Rumble, and if I'm not going to be like a Iron Man in there that lasts for a while. Which usually that, like, obviously I didn't expect myself to win, but I would have liked to have been in there, last like 30 minutes or something, just so it gives me a little something. But okay, if I'm not in line for either of those things, how can I make a moment? And I remember when they were laying it out, like the way it was laid out, and then it was kind of left to like myself, Cena, and Swoggle to kind of put together. I remember, I think it was John. I can't remember if it's John or Swoggle asked me if I'd be cool with Swoggle giving me the AA as well. And I was like, yeah, it's no problem. And then I remember they're like, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah, it's no problem." And in my mind, I was thinking, little do you guys know what I'm going to try to do. So obviously I know Cena's the horse pulling the wagon at that time for sure. So I'm not going to, but what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to sell Swoggle's AA more than Cena's AA. I was like, if I don't, then why are we doing this? The whole point of doing this is that if I've already been hit with Cena's AA, Swoggle's AA should hurt me even more, and then out I go. But I mean, I thought it was a great moment. I know Swoggle was very appreciative of it. He and I are very good friends. He wrote about it, in very kind terms in his book about just that how happy I was for him and that I was totally down for anything, and I was, like I said, I want to make a moment, and it just happens that Hornswoggle is a friend of mine, and it happens that John Cena is the biggest star in the company, so it was pretty easy for me to do. I had no ego about it at all.
Yeah. Mike, you got something there? Or you want me to keep rolling?
Well, let's move. I want to stick with Elimination Chamber for a minute, and
Okay.
I don't know, and this might go nowhere because I don't know what you're allowed to tell me here, but let's try it anyways. What, as a producer right now, we're in your capacity right now, what will your job be this Saturday? What are you doing at the Elimination Chamber?
Right now, I will be working on both women's matches on the chamber.
Very cool.
There's a few of us on the actual chamber match, and then I also have the women's tag match. So that's
now that's got to be fun. Be able to work with like all the other three women. Don't get me wrong; they're doing great with what they're doing right now. But having Trish Stratus back in Toronto, you're working that match. How fun is that?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, Trish brings. I mean, I don't even. That's preaching to the choir, but Trish brings a lot to the table, obviously. But she's like, what I love about Trish is she's fearless. She's fearless, and she's aggressive. Like in the ring, she's aggressive. She's fearless, and she just wants to show like that she belongs in, I guess, in every era, kind of like she fits in, and she like that last singles match she had was like the best match of her career. I thought that cage match with Becky, I thought was like the best match of her career at this stage of the game. Like, so, I mean, again, that's just part of her aggressiveness and her absolute fearlessness. So the fact that it's also going to be in Toronto is going to be really special and really, really cool. And I think, it'll be like, to me, Elimination Chamber has that big feel to it. And like I said, being in Toronto and being in the Rogers Center, it's going to be, I feel like the atmosphere is going to be very, very interesting that night. And like I think that feeling's going to kind of be in the air. You know what I mean? That special feeling.
Absolutely.
Toronto was once known as Bizarro World in WWE because you never knew who we were going to boo for, who we were going to cheer for. Is that still a concern behind stage when you come into Toronto?
No, I don't think so. I don't hear that. I haven't heard that. But also, like, the truth is, like, was it really Bizarro Land? I mean, I could sit at home and tell you who was going to get cheered and who was going to get booed for the most part in Toronto.
Yeah.
But like, oh wow, they're cheering for Edge, even though he's the bad guy. Like, this not really Bizarro World. It's pretty obvious that was
right.
Yeah. Oh, they're cheering for Christian.
That's why I think it was genius to put KO and Sammy together at Elimination Chamber, because at least now KO's going to get booed. You put KO against anybody else in Toronto, you're not going to get him booed.
It'd be pretty tough. I didn't even think about that. It's a great point. That is a great point. But yeah, I it's so funny. Obviously I'd hear them say Bizarro Land. I never really agreed with it. I just was like, well, Canadians just like, we like a certain style.
I remember a few months ago, we were talking right here on the show. I was talking to Tyler, and we were trying to decide what we thought John Cena was going to do in Toronto if he wasn't in the Elimination Chamber. And one of my ideas is I'd love to see him against Kevin Owens. And Tyler had a great point. He looked right at me and said, "Do you want John Cena to get booed?"
That'd be a tough one.
Toronto's not going to boo Kevin Owens. I'm like, oh man, you got a point.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It's so weird. Like, they probably wouldn't, but like, since it is Cena's last time wrestling there, like, who knows what that reaction might be.
I think we could get a lot of old school "Let's go Cena suck" chants there. I think we get a lot of vintage crowd chants there.
I feel like when I'm playing it out in my mind, of course there'd be that. There'd be, like, say in the beginning they'd really be with KO, but like towards like the middle end, like, I could see it being very pro Cena as it starts to like get into those emotions a little bit, and like, you really say like a 20-minute match and like 15 in, you start to realize like we're in the final minutes of seeing Cena wrestle live for the last time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even subconsciously those emotions start to come in. That's what, like I remember being at WrestleMania in Orlando, Shawn and Flair. And, you know, obviously I respect Ric Flair and his career, but I didn't grow up as this, we didn't get WCW or NWA. You know, I grew up in Calgary, got Stampede Wrestling and then WWF at the time.
Yeah.
And so I knew what Rick meant to the wrestling business. I'm not an idiot, but I just remember being there live and seeing that match go down. And like I said, about midway through, it started hitting me like, I started getting like a little bit emotional sitting there watching this match, being like, damn. That, like, at least in the moment, obviously we know history tells us otherwise, but in the moment, I'm like, damn, this is Ric Flair's last match. It's at WrestleMania. It started to like sink in. It started to sink in. And you know, the fan in me was really pulling for Rick at that point, if that makes sense. So I agree. They would, of course, during parts of that match, they'd boo Cena, but I don't know what, it would be interesting in an alternate universe to see what that reaction might be as the match goes on.
I was really fascinated there, TJ. I could watch you like play that out in your head and really see you like visioning that. And I'd love to kind of get your approach on when you're working as a producer, and especially on a match like the Elimination Chamber, what your process is on how you like to approach producing a match like this.
It's funny. I go through different phases. Like some years I'll watch like all the previous like women's chambers, like as I'm working out, I'll watch like one a day or whatever. And then some years I won't watch the previous ones, and I'll just kind of like try to have some fresh ideas that aren't dictated by, well, I guess I'm just going to go off things I can remember we've done in chambers before over like watching it and it being really fresh. Yeah, I just try to come up with different, as best I can, and within the parameters of like what we're looking for in the match specifically or whatever. I try to come up with as many, I guess, like twists and turns as possible. Like I view wrestling like say like I'm okay with like 70% of the match, like you know, your elbow and your friend being like, hey, they're gonna do this here, and I'm okay with you kind of being right a few times. So that way, then when it's like, watch, you're gonna do this here, and now when it is one of those turns, got him. And now once you get him, then you get that guy a couple times. Now he's not quite sure, and then he might stop elbowing his friend. He might just start paying attention and just like and be in.
You need predictability to a point.
Yeah.
You need it because you can't be unpredictable unless the predictability is already set in precedent.
Exactly.
Right?
If everything's unpredictable, then nothing's unpredictable.
I've said it for years, you know, for years there was this trope of, you know, the go home show before a pay-per-view. Whoever lost on the go home show was probably going to win at the pay-per-view. But then every once in a while, they'd swerve you, and you're like, oh, I didn't see that coming. You need to do that every once in a while. You need that predictability to set a precedent so that you can throw people off every once in a while. It's a formula, but it's a formula that works.
Yeah, and it goes, and it's funny because I completely agree with that. And like the truth is, it applies to like all sports or all movies or all, you know what I mean? It applies to like all entertainment where like you need a certain bit of predictability. Like if I go to turn on a game and it says 7:30, but really it starts at 8:30 and they're just swerving me, like that's not a good unpredictability. But when that game goes to triple overtime and I didn't expect it to, now that's a good unpredictability.
Yeah.
TJ, you're no stranger to the chamber match yourself. You were in there in 2015. What are some of your memories of working in the chamber and then that match in general?
Man, that thing hurts, man. That chamber hurts. I think, I don't know if that was the last year, but that year they didn't have any padding over those grates. And I remember I got clotheslined over the ropes and hit my toe on the grate, and it hurt a lot. And I didn't like break my toe or anything, but I just remember being like, this thing really hurts, man. These grates suck. And I've seen people take some big bumps on those grates, man. I don't know how. Yeah, that one was crazy. I remember Kalisto coming off the top of that chamber, doing a moonsault off there onto a pile of guys. It was a crazy day. That was a crazy day, Corpus Christi, Texas. We'd had a live event the day before in the Carolinas. I'm trying to remember if it was South Carolina. And we had a charter flight from Carolina to Texas, and we got in at like 5 a.m. and then got to the arena at like noon or something. It was crazy. It was a hell of a weekend. That chamber was a lot of fun. That was the first tag team one, and it was like so funny seeing New Day, like all three stuffed in the pod. I'm trying to remember there was a lot of craziness putting it together, just because there were so many people and just so many ideas and just so much creativity going on. Like I said, it was the first tag team one, so we kind of had like new parameters kind of that hadn't been set yet. So it was a lot of fun though. I remember like Cesaro came up with like our elimination, which I thought was awesome, where we did the swing drop kick, and as I hit Kofi with that, he got rolled up by like Titus or Darren Young. So like the two pins were happening at the same time, but the refs counting that pin, for example. So and then it got booed, like us getting eliminated got booed, which was Cesaro's desired reaction. So it was a good call.
Well,
Crazy to think that was 10 years ago. And
I know.
Do you find it any harder? I know you have nothing really to compare it to, but do you think it's harder to do a tag team elimination chamber match because there's so many working parts and so many people in it than it is a regular one?
Yeah, it's definitely harder in the sense there's there's double the moving parts, and then the logistics of everything, like in the tag team, the women's tag team one, like there was a suggestion of someone had an idea of like one of the partners climbs up and is hiding on top of one of the pods. But I was like, okay, but the logic is if one is up there, then that means one is down in the ring with the other two. So it's 2-on-1 down there.
Yeah.
And you could just double up and just hit like 4 tag team finishes in a row and just eliminate that team while that person's up there. We're in a singles one. You'd have to go get that guy because otherwise he's not eliminated. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the logistics and the psychology is different, completely different. Just like a singles, take away the chamber in a match, a singles match or a tag match, it's different. In a singles chamber or a tag team chamber, it's different. That's just how it's going to be.
Yeah.
Another really cool thing that I love about the WWE when they bring big events into town is it's not just the show. They take over the whole town. And I want to specifically mention a couple things that Natty's going to be doing in Toronto. You know, she's got a great appearance at the Amsterdam Brew House at 9 a.m. for a brunch with all the fans, which is going to be a lot of fun. And
that'll be fun.
Yeah, so I'm trying to weasel my way in there. Yeah, we'll see if I can get some leeway from the wife to open the budget up a little bit for that one. But don't want to get the wife beat. But and then of course we're going to see her with Chris Van Vliet as a special guest as he presents his Insight Show on Friday, February the 28th. Can you talk about your friendship with Chris and just how great he's been for the wrestling business?
Yeah, Chris has been awesome. Like it's funny. Last year and a half ago, he's been in my house, Chris. So like, yeah, he's a good guy. You know, I met him. I think WrestleMania in Atlanta, WrestleMania 27 is where I probably met him. He has a picture where I have like the crazy, just the bangs, and they're like really high. So that's definitely where I met him. But then I did an interview with him in Orlando about like 8 years ago. Was the first time I like talked with him like that, and he was really, really cool and just like I mean, he's not going off like Wikipedia and asking me questions off Wikipedia, you know, like he knows this stuff. Like he's like us. He loves this. He can just ask you questions off like what he knows, not like off, okay, I'm gonna interview this guy. So his Wikipedia says he started in 1996. Okay. That's not what he does.
Yeah.
I think he's very talented. He's done a hell of a job for himself, and I think he and Natty will have. It'll be a great interview for sure. I think he's very insightful, pardon the pun, but he knows the good questions, and he knows his guests. That's really what it comes down to. He knows his guests.
And Natty says that she's going to lock him in the sharpshooter. You got any advice from him how to counter that thing there? Reach around, grab the leg?
There's a couple pictures of Natty putting me in the sharpshooter too, so I don't really think there's a counter.
Listen, Chris has got to get down to the dungeon so that he can figure out a way out of the sharpshooter, right, Teach?
Yes.
Oh, I love it. Natty, we're looking forward to seeing you in Toronto. Thank you. Welcome to Count It Out. This is a huge honor to have you.
Thank you. I can't wait to see everybody in Toronto. I'm so excited. I'm like, it's always so great to be able to go back to Canada, which, when you're a Heart, you pretty much own all of Canada, and you stake that claim forever, because the Hearts just have this, we have an amazing connection with our Canadian fans, and it's something I never take for granted.
Absolutely, absolutely. We love the Hearts here in Toronto. This is kind of a bucket list for us because we have a goal on Count It Out where we want to talk to everybody that's in this new Heart Fountain. That picture you guys recreated?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So we've talked to TJ a couple times. We've talked to Brian Jr. Yep. We're close to Harry. We're talking to him now. Okay. And now we've got Natty on here. Natty, just really quick, can we get your memories of that picture that you guys recreated?
It was funny because it just was so organic. It was like just this great practice that we had in the dungeon. Brian Pillman Jr. wanted to come down. Harry was down training with us. And all of a sudden it was like, we were like, let's take that picture. And then of course, Brett, we have a standee of Brett at our ring.
Yeah, so. We always, whenever we do stuff at our ring, we always say Brett's watching, guys. He's judging you. You want to be 4 out of 10. We use that Brett stand-in a lot, so that standee. So it just was so funny. I think it was Brian Pillman's idea. I think it was Pillman Jr.'s idea.
Yeah, we asked him about you told us it was Brian's idea. So when he had him on the show, we're like, TJ said we had to ask you, man, and he told us all about it. It was great.
Yeah.
There she is.
I love it.
Yeah, this guy, he's not even a year old, this kitten.
This guy is
he's huge, though. He's about 14 pounds.
Wow, I was going to say.
Kitty cats.
I've got my 2 downstairs right now. Usually mine's over my shoulder here, but she decided to stay downstairs there. And I love that you talk about that we talk about this picture and just watching this generation of the Hearts. Like Harry just won the All Japan Pro Wrestling Triple Crown a couple months ago. Like what an incredible accomplishment that is.
So proud of Harry.
Harry is just crushing it. And we're so proud of him because ever since Harry was a little boy, as long as anybody can remember, he's always loved wrestling more than probably anybody in our whole family. And so for him to be killing it in All Japan, where his dad had so much history, it's just a testament to how much he loves pro wrestling. But I'm always the selfish part of me always wants to see Harry back in WWE. So that's what I think would hopefully one day we will get to see that happen. And I think Harry would kill it in WWE working with so many different guys Ron Breaker, for example. I think Harry versus Ron Breaker is incredible. God. But it's also so cool that he's getting to honor his father's, legacy and kind of, follow in his dad's footsteps in All Japan. So I'm so proud of him.
Well, yeah, and to Natty's point, when Ted was younger, it was he was going to be a hockey player or whatever, and a lawyer or whatever when he's young. But Harry, ever since he's born, he was never going to be anything else but a wrestler. He's just the 2 Natty's point. He's always loved. He's just always loved this. He's never been Harry might go be a bank. He might go be an accountant now. His whole life, since I first met him when he was 5, and he had long hair, and Roddy Piper was his favorite wrestler, and he was going to be a wrestler. And then he had here's the crazy thing. I met him when he was 5, and he had his first match 3 years later at 8 years old. Harry had his first pro wrestling match at 8 years old. He wrestled the WWE match, the live event match we did in '96. Harry's 11 years old. Ted and I were 16. It was already pretty crazy how young we were. Harry was 11 years old.
He's got so much passion for it. And, and that's, our family just, myself, TJ, Harry in particular, the next generation of Hearts, we're so proud of keeping the family legacy alive in such a positive way with wrestling. And that's one of the reasons why we also love having our ring, because it's so nice to be able to have this this place where we can all come together and work on ideas, and then have people come in like Brian Pillman Jr. And just this past week we had a bunch of people from TNA come in that were amazing. Masha, Ace, I know their real names, but Ace, and who else is the other one? Jason Hodge. They were in, and of course,
hey, they were awesome. Those guys were awesome.
One of my next goals, and I know that we can. I feel this very strongly, but I would absolutely love to have Chris Bay as a guest in the dungeon, and I think that's like, to have him come down, and like I told him, I said, not only is the invite there, but like that's something that TJ and I want to have happen very, very much. To have Chris come down and step through the ropes in the dungeon and do what he loves again. So on his road to recovery. But yeah, Chris is, not to get off topic too much, but Chris Bay has been a massive inspiration for our dungeon students, and his perseverance has pushed everybody to be their absolute best. So it's, he's a massive source of inspiration for us. So that's the next goal, is to get Chris Bay in there.
TJ, the last time that we had you on here, you and I had a fun conversation about the rise of Gunter. And we kind of compared it to his rise of Bret Hart in like that 91, 92 era. Gunter was the IC champion at the time. And, you were very adamant and very predicting that we're going to see good things for Gunter. And you were thinking he's going to take that next step. Well, he did. He's really like on that Bret Hart level now of that rise, which I think is really cool. Can you talk about just the work that Gunter has been doing and just how incredible he's been to the company?
Man, even just like you can look at the shape he's gotten into, and just so when you see something like that, to me, then that like that person's working hard behind the scenes. They're not just like putting out a video on Instagram to show that they work out. You know what I mean? Like when you see a transformation like that physically, that behind the scenes, that person's working hard. Yeah, his work and his just his ability to keep leveling up is unbelievable. He's done an amazing job. He's done an amazing, like I was watching on Monday and his promo, and I was watching it and I was like, man, it's unbelievable. Like to think like this guy's first language is in English.
Yeah.
And he's out here, he's delivering this awesome promo. He feels everything he's saying. I believe it. He believes it. You know what I mean? Like I'm a big fan of his. And it's funny, you mentioned a Bret Hart comparison. At the moment, the guy that's reminding me of like 97 Bret is Drew McIntyre.
Right.
He reminds me this whole like it's funny, this last like year, maybe year and a half. So that's longer than 97 Bret, but he's reminding me of that 97 Bret Hart in a very good way, because that's 97 Bret Hart might be my favorite wrestler of all time.
Yeah, me too.
That's a hard argument to have.
That's our wheelhouse, man. 1997, like some of the best matches, man, and even like the tail end of 96 going into 97. Yeah. Like everyone always talks about Bret and Steve at WrestleMania, but more people need to talk about Bret and Steve at Survivor Series, because
it was awesome.
That was one of the best matches, right?
Yeah, great match.
Now, we could talk about the past. We could talk about the what got us into wrestling all day long. I know we could do that. I want to take a second to talk about the future. Now, your job as a producer, I know sometimes you have to look ahead. You have to see, what are you going to be doing tomorrow? And there's a lot to do tomorrow with what you guys are doing. On March 5th, you guys are starting a new show called Evolve, bringing the Gabe Sapolsky program back in on Tubi, which is very exciting. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, is wrapped in with this WWE ID program. How cool is it for you in your position to see that WWE has a bigger lock on the future of pro wrestling and sports entertainment than they ever have, especially with this deal with TNA. Yep.
Couldn't agree more.
I've never seen, and I don't know who to fully credit, if this is all Triple H, if this is Nick Khan, if this is just a full specter of people, but I've never seen WWE have such a lock on the future of pro wrestling as they do right now. with this new program coming in, do you have time? You're busy day to day already. Do you have time to look at the people in NXT, look at the people on Evolve, look at the people in ID? I'm going to be working with these people in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Do you have time for that? Are you excited about that? Do you get to sit down and say, "Hey, I'm watching NXT. I can't wait to produce a match for Jordan Grace"? Do you have time for that?
I definitely have my eyes on. I might not sit and watch NXT like every second of it. I have it on, and I might be doing stuff. Like at one point, we were kind of having like these meetings with going over like for the Rumble, and I'd have NXT on in the background. But absolutely, there's a lot of people, and I watched LFG last week. I will absolutely. I've had some of the ID people at the dungeon.
Yeah.
So I definitely will keep an eye on the ID stuff. And you're right. Like it is such a. We do have such a plan. It seems like for the future in terms of at least develop it, like getting our hands on and developing talent for the future. And you're right. Like to your point of like looking at somebody and saying like, man, I'm going to work with them down the road, or I'd really like to. Like, that's entirely true. It's happened multiple times. Like I wasn't even a producer yet. I remember seeing Bianca on NXT, and I remember thinking, if I was a producer, which I wasn't yet, I was like, I could do some. I think I didn't know her yet. I didn't know what her personality was or anything, but I was like, I could do a lot of good stuff with her.
Yeah.
And then
now you got her in an elimination chamber. Look at that.
Yeah, and she has been awesome, like from this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely look at a lot of and a lot of the guys too. I keep an eye on too. I know I work exclusively with the women, but I keep my eye on a lot of the guys too. Like I'm glad Braun Breaker's having the success he's had. But I remember watching him in NXT and being like, man, this guy's going to be awesome when the time's right and he gets up here and he's been awesome this entire time. I feel like, you know what I mean? And it's cool. It's cool when someone overperforms more than even what I thought or like, the vision I kind of had when they supersede that. It's a great feeling and I like being wrong in a good way a lot of times.
And of course, you got some Canadian talent over there. Ethan Page is doing some great stuff over in NXT.
Doing awesome. Oba, Moose.
We don't. I know he's not really Canadian, but we treat Brian Pillman Jr. like he's a Canadian.
I got you.
He gets the pass. He's doing some cool stuff over there. He's going to be wrestling Moose next week, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited to see their match on Tuesday, man. I'm really excited to see that. It's in Cincinnati.
Yeah,
which is
that's
exactly. We're
a couple Bengals fans over here, so that's a good time.
Yeah, I see that.
So I know you've been great with your time, TJ. If you don't mind, I just got a couple more. I'll try to bang out really quick with you here. But it's such a great time to be a wrestling fan. And it's really exciting to see this working relationship that the WWE has with TNA Wrestling right now. I'd love to get your thoughts on everything that we're seeing with the WWE and TNA and just like, how cool it is like to see the WWE working with all these companies like TNA and Noah and stuff like that.
It's awesome. It's just so different. It's, I guess in a way, it's kind of what we might have, like played out in our heads as wrestling fans, 20 years ago or 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, but you always just thought like, well, this obviously won't happen, but what if there was WWE versus TNA? And like, now that could be a possibility. You know what I mean? Like, look at Joe Hendry in the Royal Rumble. Look at that reaction he got.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was in Indianapolis, Indiana. And like, there's Joe Hendry and it's 70,000 people. And then, they knew who he was. And not only knew who he was, they like him.
Yeah.
That's not always easy.
And then there's the flip when Oba showed up on Impact last week. He got a huge pop. They love him over there. It's cool.
It's just, and not all of a sudden, then that fantasy of like, what about this guy versus that guy? And the fact that it can, doesn't mean it will, but the fact that it can happen then the possibilities start becoming endless. We're like, well, okay, what about this guy and that guy, or this girl and that girl? And it's just that's the fun. Is it like puts the fun back in, not back in, but it's a huge aspect of the fun of being a fan is the fantasy.
Absolutely.
That's a big part of wrestling. Logic, a lot of it is logic, but a lot of it is the fantasy, and it's about bridging those two things, the fantasy and the logic coming together. Like if everything's just lightning bolts and the lights go out, then you're not going to stick around for 3 hours of that, 2 hours of that. You know what I mean? But if it's the Undertaker that does that, and this other guy does this, and how does these two things bridge together for this? How does Brock Lesnar, this, I know he's in WWE prior, but this UFC world champion battle this supernatural power of the Undertaker, and then you get to see how it happened. You know what I mean? Like, to me, the fantasy is a huge part of what we do. And so I think with like you said, working with different companies and all these different matchups are legit possibilities, just becomes, I mean, you said it, this is it's both. It's such a great time to be a wrestling fan, and it's such a great time to be in the wrestling business, a great time to be in the wrestling business.
Absolutely. We're still all trying to manifest Natty and Masha for that Knockouts title too. That's what we want to see.
That's it.
Yeah, and I know that's someone she really wants to get in there with as well.
Yeah, she's incredible. She's an incredible talent. And something else really fun that's happening right now. We've talked about the future of the business with the WWID program. I want to go back and talk about the past a little bit. And we have recently seen Demolition signed a WWE Legends deal, right? Amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think this year we see him going to the Hall of Fame? And, like just looking back at some of those classic matches they had with the Hart Foundation, specifically SummerSlam 90, like that 2 out of 3 falls match is incredible. Like, I think we're ready to hear that legendary music.
That's on the rotation as well, a couple times a year, that 2 out of 3 falls. That was one of the first, like when I really got like bit by the wrestling bug. Teddy had like that pay-per-view on VHS, and I watched the hell out of that tag match. There's certain matches that like Harry or Ted had on VHS, or that like when I finally got King of the Ring 94 on VHS, all I did, because it's not like it is now where I could go on YouTube and watch all this wrestling, or there'd be like at that time when I got King of the Ring 94, Raw wasn't airing in Canada.
No.
We'd get Action Zone on like a Monday afternoon or something. You get like Saturday afternoon, like Superstars. And then you'd be waiting for the week to watch some more wrestling. Well, not me. I'd be watching King of the Ring 94 over and over and over and over. Like I watched Owen versus 1-2-3 Kid probably like 150 times in my life. I've watched Brett versus Diesel like the same number of times. Like I used to be able to tell you, like I could do the commentary. I've watched it so many times.
Art Donovan asking I was going to say the commentary is pretty easy on that one.
Funny that happens to be this classic like commentary that's so wacky that happened to be the tape that I had. It's so funny. Like if I had King of the Ring 93 on tape, that would have been the one that I just kept watching over and over and over, the way that I watched King of the Ring 94. It's just so funny that that's the one I had. So that, how much does this guy weigh? How much Gorilla, I think, just starts getting a little bit annoying.
AJ, it's so funny. This is the 3rd time we've had you on this show, and somehow we always organically come back to Art Donovan. We've talked about him every time. What a legendary event. King of the Ring 93 for me, by the way, that was my one that I watch over and over. That's the one I had on tape with Brett putting on the clinic. Yeah. Like now, like looking back on it too, like as a different type of fan that I am now compared to like a kid, like watching it, like the little things that Brett's selling throughout that whole tournament, the fingers and the knees.
So here's I don't know if I've told this story on here. I've told it before, but we were at Brett's house in '96 when we did when we did the live event match. Then we started training at Brett's house. Brett was there. I don't know if he'd re-signed yet or he was just about to, but he was there that day. And then he invited us to train at his house. So at one point, Teddy and I were going to his house almost every day after school for a little period of time in the fall of '96. Like when he's just getting ready to come back and wrestle Steve Austin, like we're at his house a bunch. And I remember he's talking to us one day, and he said, like, when he found out, he was winning King of the Ring 93, he said, like, none of the matches, he wasn't winning any of the matches with the sharpshooter. And then he was like, so he's like, so I want to come up with a story as to why, like, and he's like, do you guys remember what we did? And then Ted said, he's like, yeah, you sold your knee. And Brett said, no. Yo. And then I was like, wait a minute. And Brett like looked at me and I was like, I can remember he like goes for the sharpshooter on Mr. Perfect, and Mr. Perfect grabs his fingers. And I was like, your fingers. And then Brett said, he looked at me and was like, he's like, I think we made a bond in that moment. I think I won Brett over in that very moment of knowing that he sold his fingers as a 16-year-old kid. Like I said, when I saw Davey hit Repo Man with that hook is when I realized that this isn't just black and white. A good guy can go to certain resorts if the bad guy's done it. You know what I'm saying? So again, that was what kind of got my wheels spinning a little bit. So I think Brett was pretty I think he was a little bit shocked that I remembered that it was his fingers.
Well, TJ,
That's really cool. I love that story.
You've been great with your time. The last question I'll ask you, and we'll
Yes,
let
sir.
you get on with our day. I got to talk to you about a guy that you've got a lot of history with in the WWE, and that is Mr. Jey Uso, Royal Rumble winner. I'll ask you just a couple rapid fire questions here about him. Number one, we got to talk about the incredible Royal Rumble and him winning it, his incredible entrance, and the fact that you were a part of his debut segment in the WWE all those years later. If you could just kind of talk about Jey a little bit here.
I mean, both Usos are so amazing. It's so funny the success that both of them have had over the last few years, but that Jay's currently really having at the moment. It's like, to anyone in the locker room, we're not that surprised. Like these are what the Usos have been for the last 15 years backstage, and now the audience has really gotten to know who Jey Uso really is, and clearly they like him the same way that we love him in the locker room. They love him in the arena. Sometimes it's tricky. Like, you hear, like, for example, you hear it a lot where like people say like Brad Armstrong was the funniest guy, but in the ring, he wasn't able to kind of show that. And it is hard. Like a guy like Sami Zayn is really great at like being himself out there. And it's not always easy for a lot of people. And Jey Uso has found the way to be. The Jey Uso that I know in the locker room is not much different than the Jey Uso that's in that arena. It's so awesome to see. I know he's got he's got 70,000 people behind him at Rumble, for example, but he has the entire locker room behind him as well. Everybody. It's so cool to see a guy. It's so funny that he debuted against us, beating us up, but it's just so funny to see a guy 15 years of working hard and he wins the Royal Rumble, and it shocked a lot of people.
Yeah. Love it.
This has been great, TJ. Thank you so much for taking
Hell
time
yeah.
with us.
My pleasure.
Big thank you to Natty for doing a run-in as well. Is there any last-minute things you want to plug? Anything you got working on? I know you guys got the dungeon. You've got Workhorse going on.
Yeah, I mean, the dungeons, it's a cool place to really. I mean, I know I'm producing matches every week too, but the dungeon's a good place where I get to kind of play with certain things my own style, and then see if I can kind of bring them to WWE if it translates as well.
Thanks.
And it's a cool place to keep it just keeps us really sharp and really really kind of locked in, and a little bit of like that finger on the pulse. Like I have like a lot of like Natty said earlier, like we have like we have WWE people come in, we have TNA people come in, I have guys that are wrestling on the indies and stuff come in. So I had a year and a half ago in the summer, I had like a group of 5 or 6 guys and girls from maybe 8 from Toronto, from Ontario come down.
Yeah, I work
That's
with
right.
some of them. I'm a ring
Yeah,
announcer.
some of our friends went up there. Yeah.
Rajan,
and
Rajan
those guys,
Husher and Jax Williams. Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, they were awesome. They came and they worked their asses off, man. And it was hot. It was hot down here. And if you're not, I'm not from Florida, but I've lived here for this will be 18 years now. If you're not from here and you haven't really experienced the summer here and the humidity, it'll kick the hell out of you. Mm-hmm. And the thing about the dungeon is the weather. They say like in a match, the referee's the third man, but at the dungeon, the weather's the third man. We don't have AC. and we have two big industrial fans. We don't have AC and we don't have heat. So the times when it is cold, which Florida cold is definitely different from Canadian cold.
Yeah.
But still, when it's Florida cold, that ring's still pretty cold. The weather is the big element, and so those guys pushed through in that heat, man. And we trained every day for a little bit, a couple hours, and they pushed through. Like, they got beat up a little bit, they were banged up, and they were exhausted, but they loved it, and they just kept coming back for more. And like, that's all you can ask for out of training people. That's all you can ask for, is they give you all they got. That's it. I can't make you, grow a pair of wings and fly. I can't do that. But if you give me all you got, we can kind of construct those wings together a little bit.
On a personal level, I got to thank people like you and Natty and a few other, especially some of the schools around here, because of what you're doing with the dungeon and the people you're working with. I feel extremely confident and extremely happy knowing that my son is going to have some really cool wrestling to watch for the next 20 years.
Yeah,
you're molding the wrestling business for the next 20 years. I'm not going to lie to you. There was a point 15 years ago where, what's wrestling going to look like? I wasn't sure. Even as a fan, I was starting to get apprehensive and like, is there going to be really good wrestling in 20 years from now? Thank God, yes, there is.
Yeah.
But I've never been so confident knowing moving forward. I don't understand how anybody can be critical of wrestling right now, because the future is so bright. The indies are amazing right now. And the work that you and Natty are doing in the dungeon and some of the other teachers, especially around here, are doing right now, makes it so my son is going to, hopefully he stays a wrestling fan. He's only 6 right now. So hopefully he stays wrestling. And if he does, he's in for a treat, man. So thank you for that.
Hell yeah, my pleasure. I love what we do. I love the dungeon that we run is really just like a love letter to wrestling, and just like the wrestling business has been so good to me. It's been unbelievably good to me. It's given me way more than I ever could have imagined, and I just try my absolute best to give back to the business, and I want it to be, and I know a lot of people say this, that they want it to be better off when they leave it than when they got there. Mm-hmm. But I genuinely believe that, and I just want to give back. And the truth is, wrestling business doesn't owe anybody anything. We all decided to get into it or to become fans of it or whatever. It doesn't owe us anything. So if we treat it as such, we'll never be too disappointed. We'll always, right. As long as we stay within those parameters, we'll always be good. And if you do have successes, the more you give back, the better it'll all feel in the end.
Absolutely. That's a perfect way, I think, to take it home here. Mike, do you want to take us home on this one, my friend?
Thank you so much, TJ, and thank you for being a part of a very elite group. You're one of only, I think, 4 people who are in the 3-peat club here on Count It Out.
Hell yeah!
Always a pleasure, and hopefully we'll have a few more over the next couple of years. Awesome. Thank you as always for being part of this.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Good luck in Toronto. I know you guys are gonna have a great time. This is one of the biggest shows that
I'm looking forward to. It. Actually, funny enough, I'm renewing my passport right now, and it hasn't come back yet. And I was like, our travel, like international, the lady who handles like our international stuff. I was like, hey, am I gonna be able to go? And she said, oh yeah. She's like, don't worry, she said, worst case scenario, I can get you a document. So I on Friday, I was a little worried about I might not be able to make it, but my fears are all gone now. I will absolutely be in Toronto.
Bundle up. It's been cold the last couple of weeks, okay? I don't know if you've gotten spoiled down there in Florida. It's been cold here, all right?
I have, but I've been on the road. So here's the thing. It's been cold on the road this winter, but I haven't encountered any snow yet.
Well, I'm 6'1", and the snow's piled up to my ears right now where I am.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get some snow.
To go. It can be cold. The Roots of Fights tracksuits keep me warm in the cold, so that's okay. Just me and the snow. We're not really. We're kind of like maybe Brett and Goldberg.
Yeah, me too. I love being Canadian, but I'm a terrible Canadian for my hate for the winter
That's
time. I think
hilarious.
you got it figured out moving up to Florida there.
Hell yeah.
Oh, that's
Well,
great, man. Thanks for
ladies
taking
and
the time.
gentlemen, make sure you check out Elimination Chamber this coming Saturday. Go to everything else WWE is doing. They're going to be SmackDowns on Friday.
Yep.
Natty's got
Natty's going
the
to be
brew
at
house.
Amsterdam Brew House on Saturday morning. Lots of stuff going on. The Chris Van Vliet show, a lot of stuff going on there. Check that all out. It's all on Google. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, TJ. You have all been counted out.
Thank you very much.